Hydrate or dihydrate.
Very true.
Yeah. Here we go. Let's get straight into it.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the O3C podcast, coming to you from us two fellas at O3C Games. Who are we? I'm Jonathan Dunn, and I'm joined by Chris Dow.
The Genesis Quest.
And we are chatting about our excellent love of excellent video games. Your turn for the announcements.
Oh, fuck it. I try and write one and I just can never remember which is which. Okay. Do you know how many hours a week we put into making this show? The product that it is, the quality product that it is. I'll tell you what, it's a lot. We won't go into minute figures, but it's a lot. And we enjoy doing it, but we also enjoy people saying, good job, we like listening to it. The easiest way that you can say we like listening to it is by leaving a review or leaving a rating on any podcast platform or catcher of your choice. It does make a tremendous difference. It does help to push our podcast forwards and upwards along the kind of algorithmic railway that drives all content on the internet these days. Other ways you can say you enjoy listening to it, of course, is to share it with friends, pass it on to people who might be looking for recommendations, perhaps tweet about it, perhaps share it on Facebook or any other social media platform of your choice that you may have migrated to, leaving Twitter like a sinking ship. The other thing you can do, if you really, really enjoy listening to us, is to go to patreon.com/O3C Games and consider pledging a few pounds a month in exchange for a whole manner of wonderful perks. We've got full bonus episodes. We've got a smorgasbord of deleted scenes. We've got some video content now for this series. Every single episode, uncut, ad-free, and available to watch as well as listening to, and a whole bunch of other things that pop up here and there along the way. We'd love for you to get more involved so we can continue to be as involved.
I love it. I love it. That's great. That's brilliant. Right then. So here we are. We are back. Had an excellent fortnight report last week.
We did.
Lots of food for thought. Jurassic thoughts, park thoughts, cave thoughts, and noiry thoughts. We enjoyed all of them. All of them.
The full gamut.
The full gamut. All the dinosaurs. But this week we are back with the Playdate, and we're very much looking forward to talking about the latest two games that have released in the first season of the Playdate, OMAZE and Demon Quest 85. But before we dive into that Playdate, we are going to catch each other up on what we've been playing this week, because I don't feel like I've touched base with you massively this week, and I think that's probably because you've been very busy. But have you managed to squeeze any gaming into this last week, Chris?
As you say, an insanely busy week with work, so game time has been pretty bitty. There's been half an hour chunks of things here and there.
Bitty.
There's been half an hour chunks of things here and there because I physically do not function unless I play just a bit of a game here and there. It's remarkably important for my general day-to-day functioning. With Arcade Paradise now off the docket, I have played a range of either very familiar games to help de-stress, stuff I know well, or just garbage, no-thought games to play for 15 minutes at the end of a very long day. So on the good side, the familiar side, I've done a couple of stages of Res Infinite this week. I played through all of its Area X mode. Obviously, it's all great. It's basically peerless. Georgia watched me play a bit and asked, what's the goal here? And whilst at the time I just counted with, well, you shoot the things, you don't get shot, and I just carried on. It's so much more than that, to me at least. And I obviously talked about it for a very long time as my original number one, way back when. But just like Tetris Effect, this is a game all about feeling connected to things and the Zen state you can get into just flinging your reticle about and targeting clumps of enemies makes me feel like I'm properly in the center of the matrix. And sometimes you really need that sort of all-encompassing feeling. It's a very good game for that. I've played tiny bits of an endless runner called Jumping Joe. It's very similar to Wood Guy Jr. from Arcade Paradise, if you're into that. I know you are, Jonathan Dunn, because you're just hitting either the left or right bumper on the controller to ascend a series of platforms. Just going for a high score, then trying again. Upgrade your character with some coins. It's very like mobile friendly sort of thing, but
I love it.
It's good fun. It's good fun.
Downloading it now.
I've played half an hour of the truly average Jumanji tie-in game from a few years ago.
My goodness.
That, as with so many games, is inexplicably in my Steam library from some bundle at some point. It's trying its hardest to be a co-op, play the same stages over and over shooter like Left 4 Dead. But if a game like Left 4 Dead is the best in its class, this is probably competing for worst. It is perfectly functional, but it has no polish, no individual flavour. It comes from publisher Outright Games, who have made a name for themselves in the last few years by being pretty much the only publisher on the planet now putting out sort of AA movie and TV tie-ins. But this is not one of their strongest. Like, as the opposite side of the coin, a few months back I played a little bit of their Addams Family tie-in that was really generic, but it was semi-enjoyable as a 3D platformer. But Jumanji really doesn't get anywhere near even that sort of 6 out of 10 category. It's a nothing game. It's a nothing game. And finally, I've played a few tiny games on the Playdate. We haven't mentioned any side-loaded treats recently, and I don't know if these are quite treats because they're very small, little bite-sized things, but I have played a few games there. One is called Gatecrasher. It is a simple score chaser that works sort of like an inverted super hexagon as you're flying into the screen and attempting to use the crank to move your ship around to thread the needle on an endless series of obstacles. So it's a pretty good toilet time killer. It's got, a good amount of shine to it. I think you really notice with these small games, some games when they're made by a single person feel like they're made by a single person. And some games when they're made by a single person make you feel like, oh, they've really put the effort in to just give it that little tweak to elevate it a little bit higher. The other two games I played on the Playdate were called Almost Tennis and Doink, both riffs on Pong, essentially.
Okay.
Almost Tennis is laid out like a pretty standard tennis game, but really you are just reflecting a ball back and forth like in Pong. But the twist is that you can control when to swing your racket, and so with a bit of practice, you can actually control direction and power much more than you would be able to in vanilla Pong.
Or badminton. No, what's it called? Shuttlecocks in Arcade Paradise.
Basically, every episode is going to be coming back to Arcade Paradise for quite a while, I think. Almost Tennis, it's got really good character to it. And interestingly, it was made by a developer called Squid God, who documents all of their Playdate projects via YouTube. And I've watched quite a few of their videos because it's fascinating just to start to see the challenges of working with this sort of technically limited bespoke hardware. So Almost Tennis, I think they said they finished in about a week, and it's really impressive that a little game is put together and feels this kind of cohesive from such a small window of development. So I find it interesting to have just a peek behind the curtain sort of thing of how these things are made. Doink is more like a standard Pong game, but the twist here is that after every point you either earn or concede, you choose from two, I guess, multipliers you'd call them, which mix up the gameplay a little bit. Oh, no, hang on. You choose from two modifiers that will then mix up the gameplay a little bit. So you might choose slower bats or a faster ball or a net that will randomize the ball's direction of travel, stuff like that. It's really simple, but it's a nice proof of concept. And I think it would do well, though, to just really double down on more of the silliness. There's two games that came to mind when I was playing this, and they're both very small releases. I doubt anyone's played them, but an ancient Xbox Live Indie Games release called Super Amazing Wagon Adventure, and a side-scrolling shooter available on most platforms these days, but again, unknown, called Shutshimi. Both function very similarly in that you get new modifiers applied to either your wagon or ship, respectively, after each round. And the joy of each game comes from how quickly a build can get really silly, like far more than in Binding of Isaac, where you're considering how to build something. In these, it's just like, this is what you've got now. You just have to deal with it. And I think Doink could lean into that if it wanted to say, okay, there's exploding balls this round, or the paddles are invisible for a round, or you need to play a Frogger-style minigame while you're trying to cross the playfield whilst avoiding the ball. Like, there's all sorts of things you could do to really push into this kind of, it's Pong, but not sort of thing. But at the moment, it's functional. It's something to play for 2 minutes. Nothing wrong with it, but nothing that exciting about it either. And that's been about it, really. Half an hour of a bunch of pretty disparate experiences.
Wow, I've learned something, and thank you.
Pokemon?
Yeah. I've played a fair bit more Pokemon Violet this week, and after my little negative rant about the downfalls of Pokemon Violet, I did say last episode that I would make amends for that. Not amends, but I would seek to balance the scales this week, and I'm going to be more positive, and I'm only going to talk about the positive things that I found in Pokemon Violet.
Go on then.
So on the Playdate, no, to be fair, it's not a total tragedy of a game, and there are some nice things in here that I did touch on a little bit last week, and it does continue the trend of establishing some nice new things that would be good to see taken further in future games. With, you know, whether that will happen, who knows? It's yet to be proven.
Yeah.
But I have also taken the game to pretty much 100% now, and
I hate it, and yet,
I mean, and yet, yeah. All I need to do is get the late game Pokemon from Pokemon Scarlet to complete my Pokédex, and then I've done everything in the game, which has probably taken me, I don't know, 40 hours. Maybe I haven't actually checked on my game file, and I have found a few more things to be positive about in the game. So things I've enjoyed. Let's start where you basically start the game, which is at the Uva Academy, which is the main school that you attend in Pokemon Violet. The one in Pokemon Scarlet has a different name, but I'm sure it amounts to exactly the same thing. And this is sort of your central hub, basically, in the world for your character, who yes, is a student at said academy.
Uva.
Uva. Uva. There's quite a good amount of fun stuff to do around the school, which I had no idea was there, really, because you don't need to do any of it. And I did not do any of it until I'd done most of everything else, and then thought, oh, you know what? I remember there's a school. Let's go and check that out. And there's loads. You can take classes in a range of different subjects and pass exams, which are honestly a lot more interesting and relevant than I ever thought they would be. Like at first I thought, oh, great, more menus and text boxes to navigate, to bulk out the story. But I genuinely learned quite a lot about the games, and it works through and the different subjects allows you to sort of come at different game mechanics with different points of view. So there is a maths class that makes you work out the probability of like critical hit ratios and stuff like that. There is an art class that helps you identify sort of certain traits of Pokemon through just looking at them and the design of things. And there's a whole thing about there's a languages class that you can do, which throws a bit of a spotlight on the real world inspiration for some of the more recent Pokemon games. So it'll show you some French and say, oh yeah, this is the language they speak in whatever the world is in Pokemon X that was inspired by France, etc., etc. And then the language class has also evolved to help you understand the nuances of Pokemon cries and things like that. It's just, yeah, it was really nice, and they all of the teachers that are teaching the different classes, they're all quite good. They're varied and interesting characters. They've got very bold personalities to them, and the more you progress through a teacher's class, the more your relationship with the teacher grows, and then you're treated to little story scenes between you and your teacher, and then all the way through up to the end, you pass your final exam, and you'll end up being given like a special quest from each of them, and then you get like a final reward, and it's really good. It's really interesting. I mean, it's not quite on the level of like the Persona games in terms of like juggling your school life and relationships with all your RPG questing, but yeah, it could be that, you know, that if this idea is developed further in future Pokemon games, it serves as just a good sort of foundation in which to set a game. And the overall story pulls together in actually a really nice way at the end. I'd spoken about the three sort of main storyline strands that are in the game, with you trying to beat all the gyms, beat all the Titan Pokemons, and take down all of Team Star. And the main sort of three characters that are linked to those storylines, by the time you get to the end bits, they have all joined you in this sort of like 4-man squad that you then go into the final end game area, which is really, really cool in design. It's not in performance, but But the story sees you descend into this mysterious crater that's right in the middle of this world, known as Area Zero, where there's all kinds of anomalies around, and this is actually where the main difference between Scarlet and Violet really is, because in Violet there is a down in this crater there is a rift in time, sending Pokemon from the far-flung future crossing over into our world. But in Pokemon Scarlet, it's a portal to the distant past. And this makes for some really, really good Pokemon designs, because these aren't crazy, mad new Pokemon coming at you like the Ultra Beasts in Sun and Moon, who came from a different dimension and really bloody look like it. I love them. I thought they're fantastic.
Yeah.
But in these games, they are either like ancient ancestors of Pokemon you know. So you've got these like ancient versions of like Jigglypuff and like Magneton and Salamence and a few more with just really crazy, twisted sort of like ancient design. So you can sort of see and imagine how they've like evolved in the Darwinian sense, not in the Pokemon sense, how they've actually evolved over like hundreds of years to become the Pokemon that you know now.
Yeah.
And then in Pokemon Violet, you've got these like futuristic versions of Pokemon like Volcarona and Tyranitar and even Delibird, who have like they've naturally evolved over like hundreds of years into these more like technological cyber Pokemon. But they're really, really cool, and it's a nice twist on the continuing trend of like regional versions of established Pokemon, which like freshen up older Pokemon with, you know, some new designs.
On that, just because this is an interesting point for me at least, the way, because I'm not a Pokemon aficionado, I know there are these regional variants where it's like, oh, it's Diglett but with a hat or a mustache or something like that.
Yeah.
When you are collecting your Infinidex, or whatever you're going to call it, but that you have everything, your big box thing.
My living dex.
There we go.
Dex.
You can tell I'm not invested in this franchise. When you are building that, do you need to have variants of these Pokemon? Are they considered as different things?
No. So there's a few different things. So some variants will evolve into a totally different Pokemon. So so that like there's a variant of a Meowth from Sword and Shield that evolves into a totally different Pokemon than a normal Meowth would evolve into a Persian, or there's a lowland Meowth that evolves. I don't think he does evolve into a Persian. I can't remember. Sometimes if the regional variant is particularly cool, I'll have one, and I'll have it I've got a separate box for like variants. And in the Sword and Shield DLC, there were regional variants of the original 3 legendary birds from Generation 1.
Okay.
So there was like a Galarian, Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres, and they were really, really cool. So I was like, well, I'm definitely, even though they don't count as they're still the same number in the Pokédex. Yeah. They're cool, so I'm going to keep them. In this game, there's in Pokemon Violet and Scarlet, there's actually they've taken that one step further, because there are Pokemon that are clearly, they're basically like, they are regional versions of Pokemon, but they are so different that they are actually totally different Pokemon. So there's like a water type Diglett called Wiglet, and that's a different Pokemon. And he evolves.
Is that a different number?
It's a different number.
Right. Okay.
And instead of evolving into a Dugtrio, it evolves
Wugtrio into
a Wugtrio. Hey! You're absolutely right. Hey! And there is a...
I'll buy the game off the back of that. That's great.
Yeah. There's also a land-based Tentacool and Tentacruel, which are sort of grass type, and they look like mushrooms. So like the jellyfish heads of them are like sort of the caps of mushrooms, and then like the tendrils coming down are like the spores that go into the ground for mushrooms. So and they are, again, that's not a regional Tentacool and Tentacruel. They are new Pokemon called Toadscool and Toadscruel, and things like that. So it's they're always shaking things up a little bit. But to answer your question, if it's not a different number, it doesn't need to go into my living dex. For me, as I sort of have to draw a line with some completionism with this. But if I really like it and it's a really cool design, then because you also get Pokemon that have different forms in the same region. So there's like there's a Deerling, which is a little deer, and evolves into a Sawsbuck, I think, is the like the antlery deer.
Okay.
And they have different seasonal forms. So you could get all 4 types of that to go in your decks if you really wanted to complete it. But it only matters if you have one to tick the number. But speaking of new Pokemon, here are some of my favourite new Pokemon in this new game. There is a see if you can guess you might have already seen it, but I'm going to see if you can guess it. The name of a bred dog.
Loaf something. Loaf pup.
You know what? It's not that, but we could be here for ages if we keep going down this. We have Fido.
Oh, stupid.
that evolves into Daxbun. So you've got these lovely baked goods dog Pokemon. They're wonderful.
Daxbun's pretty good.
There are some dark mobster dog Pokemon, Mastiff and Mabostiff, who are great. And there's some spooky dog Pokemon, Greavard and Houndstone, some great new dogs.
Don't like the spooky ones as much. Don't like the names.
Fair enough. Lechonk is a great round pig. There's because this new Pokemon region, Paldea, is inspired by Spain, and there's I don't want to put Spain and Mexico in the same bracket, and I don't know the difference between Aztecs and Mayans.
Just quit while you're ahead.
Yeah, I'll cut that out.
Still need to see it.
Yeah. There is a tumbleweed Pokemon blowing around the deserts called Bramblin, which is he's pretty cool. There are there's an evolution to a fantastic, I think I mentioned it before, there's an evolution to a Pokemon called a Pawniard, evolves into a Bisharp. They're just these really fucking hard as nails Pokemon that are inspired by chess pieces. And there's a new evolution now called a King Gambit, he's just absolutely incredible. And there was a very cool new Pokemon called Ceruledge, which is a dark fire Pokemon that's exclusive to Violet. And they've been great. There are these 4 legendary Pokemon in this game called the Ruin Legendaries, and they're very cool and very awesome. And even though they're a total pain to access because you need to locate a bunch of hidden things around the game world, and they're like these ominous dark stakes in the ground, and they're hidden in sort of obscure areas all over the world. And considering that everything is hidden in the world until you're like an inch in front of it, with the terrible draw distance, it makes like hunting these just a bit more of a chore than it needed to be. But also, to be fair, the game does actually seem to prioritise generating these black stakes in the ground when choosing what to render, so you can actually see them from a much further distance than anything else in the game.
Okay.
But they're all great. They're really, really great. They're really worth getting. There's the pseudo-legendary Pokemon in this, which is a cool Dragon Ice type called Baxcalibur, or Backcrack and Saxcalibur, as I've called him. It didn't allow it. It's too long. I would have called him that.
Oh, yeah.
And again, I'm a huge fan of the ancient Pokemon variations that are in Scarlet. I've seen a little bit of them on the internet, but I don't have any in my game yet, and I'm really looking forward to getting them because they are really, really cool and almost cool enough to make me think about buying Scarlet and playing that to get them like an idiot. We'll see. And even though I'm really not a fan of the terrestrializing gimmick in the game, the Terra raids that are in the game, which are essentially exactly the same as Max raids from Sword and Shield, they're still really, really good fun. They feel like events. They're like boss fights. There's a team of 4 of you going up against one massive Pokemon, and they're just really fun to do. Like, I've played online a fair amount with just getting a team of random people to bring down like a massive, super, super strong Pokemon. And that's just, it's really, really cool. I've made myself a very, very strong Azumarill to fight these, which I found out about online, and with some help from Minty, who if you have the right combination of stats, ability, and move sets with your Azumarill, you can do just insane amount of damage in these fights. But even still, there's still like event raids that are significantly harder than like the 5-star raids that are in the game. And even with like a full team of maxed out Pokemon, you can still really struggle against those. And also, like I've just had a lot of fun just jumping from raid to raid to raid, beating big Pokemon, not even catching them most of the time, but it's just fun to fight them. All in all, I can't really work out if this game is a 6 or a 7 out of 10. It's closer to a 6, I think, because like the stuff that I did enjoy in the game is stuff that hasn't really changed over the last 25 years of Pokemon. You know, and the new stuff that I like just isn't finished. But I have actually been encouraged by Nintendo's recent statement about how they are going to attempt to continue to patch the game to improve performance. And I don't know if they've got DLC planned for the game like they did with Sword and Shield.
Definitely.
Or, I mean, they announced the DLC pretty early doors for Sword and Shield. Like, it launched with a expansion pass you could buy. I don't know whether or not they're holding back a third pillar version of the game instead for this. But yeah, I'll continue to keep an eye on that and hope the games become more solid. And I really hope that Game Freak, Pokemon Company, and Nintendo take the feedback as seriously as they take the income from this game and do what they need to do to make, you know, the future of the Pokemon series be the very best
that it can be.
Indeed. We shall see. But yeah, for now, I have put that game down because I've done as much as I can. I don't know what I'm going to play next. I've got God of War sat here ready to play. I've got Mario and Rabbids and Xenoblade. But also, I did promise that I would. Well, I threatened to myself that I might go on a bit of a Jurassic Park gaming binge, and I made a start on Lego Jurassic World on the Steam Deck because it was about £1, and it looks really nice. And you play through all the Jurassic Park games, and that's fun.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
pretty good. With that one, I've played a lot of Lego games over the years. I think I beat the main story campaign for all of Lego Jurassic World. And then I watched Georgia essentially take the game to 99% like she always does, which drives me insane. But she does it with all Lego games. Yeah. I don't know if it's the worry that it's like, well, then it's done and I can't play it anymore. Maybe. Yeah. But she often will basically max out the entire thing. And then when she has maybe one character left to buy, I'll be like, well, that's me then. It really makes me angry.
Yeah. It's a play date. It's a play date. We're back with a Playdate. Hey! Fantastic. Yay. 2 new games, 4 more years. I am looking forward to talking to you about Demon Quest 85. I don't know if you did manage to play the first 84 Demon Quest games. I didn't.
I read a little précis just to make sure I knew what was going on.
Yeah, I did. I watched a Let's Play, but we're not gonna dive into that just yet because Chris, first of all, you need to tell me about OMAZE.
OMAZE. I did not really know what to expect going into this one because the name and the title art just seemed so abstract. Yeah. But if I'd looked at the title a little more directly, I might have been able to infer that it's literally referencing the experience being about navigating mazes around the edge of a series of connected circles, or O's, as in OMAZE. Do you get it?
It's an OMAZE.
It's an OMAZE.
It's an OMAZE. It's an OMAZE.
Things start off pretty simple. The crank moves your little avatar around the circumference of each circle, either clockwise or counterclockwise. The B button lets you pass into another connected circle. And eventually you're given the ability to zip across the diameter of a circle using the A button. The challenge comes from avoiding obstacles within each circle, sometimes static, sometimes moving, or sometimes the challenge is because of spatial puzzles, as the crank will often move other elements in the scene as well as you, meaning that you need to really consider your movement carefully so as not to lock yourself out of direct, safe passage. The Playdate screen can fit up to 15 circles, I think, or chunks of maze per stage, essentially. And while some will be made up of a series of...
Excuse me. I don't know why I turned up to the microphone to cough.
And while some will be made up of a series of linear challenge rounds, Others require a bit more lateral thinking, as you have to plot the best route through the orbs kind of thing. Things get tricky quite fast, but for me, it wasn't the obstacles necessarily themselves that I struggled with most of the time, but rather getting used to which direction my marker would move when I turned the crank.
That's entirely it.
And this is a genuine issue, I think, with not just my brain, but I think a lot of people who play games. Because case in point, I've played approximately 3 million hours of Tetris over the years. And yet it's only in the last few that I've been able to begin using both clockwise and counterclockwise rotation.
Yeah.
You know, with any sort of consistency. And in the hours I've messed around with OMAZE, I've still not managed to embed the muscle memory to know which way I'll move when I start cranking. Part of the difficulty, I think, comes from the problem that the crank is on the side of the device, and so movement is not relative like a D-pad. So on the screen, clockwise means rotation towards the right, whereas on the crank, that is moving away from your body. So it's a different axis of movement, essentially. And it's a little thing, and I think this is a me problem far more than an OMAZE or Playdate issue, really. But it's made certain levels far tougher than I think they would have been, as I might get through a tricky section and then die on a really easy obstacle because I've hastily spun in the wrong direction under a bit of time pressure, and then had to do the whole string of circles again. It's not too dissimilar to old isometric games as well that would make the maddening decision to make up on the D-pad or joystick move upright on screen rather than a straight kind of mirrored upwards input. Yeah. And that slight disconnect just does something screwy to my brain that when I'm trying to move at pace, it's impossible. Because in my head at that stage, up is essentially moving right, left is moving up, and, you know, everything is slightly twisted. But, you know, it's something, isn't it? Something to think about. I think the art here is pretty functional. You know, there's no beautiful dithered sprite work like in Echoic Memory. There's no playful animation like in Crankin. Everything is made of abstract shapes and simple forms. So it's very much function over aesthetics. The music and sound too are minimalist to the point that having the sound on really isn't going to give you a dramatically different experience to just playing on mute. Because it's, you know, the cranking motion plays a simple... Oh, big burp. Cranking motion plays a simple tone that will ascend or descend in pitch as you move clockwise or counterclockwise, and other obstacles or collisions play simple bleeps and bloops. It's about as exciting sound-wise as an old Atari 2600 game. You're really not getting too much from it. There's 4 worlds in OMAZE, with each culminating in a sort of simple boss encounter. And at this stage, I'm just past the halfway point now, so I've done 2 worlds. And I imagine I will carry on to the end, but there have definitely been times when I've had to take a breather, not because the game is that tough, but because my brain and the controls just are not playing nicely together. I am going to hazard a guess that you won't have enjoyed this one very much, but I'm very happy to be proven wrong. But that's my gut feeling.
Okay, no, I did quite enjoy it, but I have exactly the same issue as you, which is how many times I do even the same level, like even like just going between 2, even literally just changing once, and I'm like, my brain just doesn't, it just will not play ball at all. And it's maddening. It's absolutely maddening.
It's a strange one, isn't it?
It's a shame because I do actually really like it. I like how simplistic it is. You know, well, not simplistic, minimalist it is. And again, it's like it's asking me to do something different to what I've done before. And I think similarly to actually what I'm going to come on and talk about in Demon Quest, it's nice seeing developers using the Playdate as an opportunity to try something different, not necessarily going like, oh, well, we have to use the crank and that's different. Just going, actually, you know what? No, actually, this is a platform where the general sort of mentality is like all rules are off. Let's just do something different because we can, and this is a platform to do that on. And it's another example of something like that. Although it's. I cannot tell you how annoying it is. I mean, well, you know you've
literally just said the same thing. Yeah,
you said, I should have listened. It's
been a long day. No one cares. Really.
And like you said, it's not a Playdate problem. It's not an OMAZE problem. I think it's a me problem as well because there's not like an easy way of saying, oh, actually, if they did this as an update, they could fix it. Aside from using the D-pad to move around, and then.
But even then, if I
was thinking
as well,
this, like. You know,
if your D-pad if say right always went clockwise and left always went counterclockwise, if you transition into a circle and you were essentially upside down of that, or in a place where it's not then a kind of cardinal movement, you know, you're moving in a strange way. I don't know. I think it's an issue with building mazes out of circles. And that is the fundamental concept of the game. So that's not something you could say, well, just put it in a square, just shift it out. It really does. You know, it depends on that being the way you control it, essentially, to give the game its own identity, its own flavour.
It's like in Sonic when you're running really fast and you run up the wall and you're going upside down. I never know which direction to hold to keep my momentum going. Yeah,
really similar.
Never learnt. Good game though. Like I think it's conceptually it's good. I just can't fucking play it. I can't play it. Demon Quest 85.
Yes.
Continues actually on the themes of school and classes from Pokemon Violet, because Demon Quest 85 is basically revision and an exam in game form. So the premise of the game is that you have found a demon summoning magic book. You want to try and summon the demons in there by reading about them and figuring out all the right components of the summoning ritual to successfully summon these different big, strong, spooky boys. And you are based in your house, and you can go to the different rooms in your house to select from a pool of different types of components for the ritual by using cross-referencing and your great powers of deduction. You then need to solve the puzzles of how to summon them. And you need to deduce several things. Firstly, you need to identify a problem that needs to be solved, and that is going to come from trying to help your classmates. And you can flick through your yearbook and find a little paragraph about each of your classmates, and then you go, okay, that person's got a problem to be solved. And then you need to find the right demon to solve said problem. Then you need to find the right music to accompany the summoning from a library of cassettes in your lounge. Then you need to find the right gift to offer the demon to entice them into your lives, and that is typically picked from the pantry in your kitchen. For example, to summon the Marquis Shax, a rogue thief demon renowned for stealing horses and monies from the houses of kings.
He likes the trumpet.
He does. You read his or she. You read their page in the book, and anything that's written in bold in the book is probably key for you to remember. So you see a line that says, "The Marquis can make men forget anything." So there's your problem to solve, or certainly, you know, that's the Marquis can solve that problem if one of your friends has it. Then you see a line that says the Marquis appears in court. Then you see a line that says, when the Marquis appears in court, he is preceded by a symphony of trumpets. There's your musical clue. And it also helpfully says that because the Marquis is a thief and can steal anything he wants, a gift of some sort is appropriate, but he does not want for anything specific. So you'll be free to choose pretty much any gift that you want. So then you skulk around your house trying to set the scene for the summoning. So you head to the kitchen to find a gift, grab anything off the shelf because the Marquis is not fussy. You head to the cassette player in the lounge, browse through your playlist until you find a track that says it features trumpets, like the track STAAT, Start, which conveniently has a picture of some trumpets on the front cover, and the blurb says that it has a twist of New Orleans big band jazz, so trumpets should be covered there. Then we head to the bedroom to flick through your yearbook of classmates to find out whose problem the Marquis can solve, and you browse through your friends until you find somebody that says she has a very public regret that she wishes everyone would forget as soon as possible. But you also need But then you also need to summon a full circle of friends for the summoning ritual. So in the blurb of Grace Wong, who has this regret, we see that her regret is related to a boy named Aaron. So we find him in the yearbook, add him to the circle. Then you need to have 4 to complete the group. So you can add AN other. And now you can head to the attic to attempt to summon the Marquis, and then you are treated to a little bit of story playing out with a few more dialogue choices to make to summon them correctly. Not as simple as that, because the Marquis is not summoned correctly at this time, and so you have to go and summon another demon who might know a bit more about the Marquis Shax. You then have to do all of this deduction again for another demon who wants a salty gift, so you go to the kitchen, grab some beef jerky, whack on another banging tune to summon them, so you can then ask them about the Marquis Shax, who says that he will only be summoned if there's a triangle around. So you can rebrowse the gifts for the Marquis Shax, find something triangular. Dairy Lee, not in the kitchen. I thought maybe you could form your group of only 3 people to make a triangle. Not an option. So I browsed through the other classmates to see if any of them had any triangle-based paraphernalia with them, and sure enough, there is a girl who plays the triangle in the school band, so you can bring her along as the 4th member to summon Shax. Doesn't fucking work. Reread some more stuff. Retry someone else in the circle. Unfortunately, you do have to go through some repeated dialogue when attempting the summons, which is a bit of a shame because the game absolutely knows that you're going to be attempting these multiple times, and it would have been nice to have had some different dialogue in there to make it a bit more interesting when you're trying to brute force your way through summons after pulling your hair out because your aging brain just simply cannot contain all of the required information. And much like with OMAZE, I can't really fault the game for this, really, because it feels like those cross-referencing puzzles you get in the back of magazines, and you kind of really need a pen and paper to keep track of it all. If you want to make any sort of progress. I mean, it's a fun concept and I like it. And the writing that there is witty and personable, if, like I said, not massively varied. And like I said about OMAZE, it's an example of a developer using the Playdate as an opportunity to create a game that's just a bit more left field, even if it's not playing entirely to the Playdate's strengths. But I genuinely found myself incapable of remembering the combination of factors I'd use to summon the demon, even if it was just to repeat it, let alone to then work out what element to replace in the combination. And I've just been acutely aware of this cognitive failing recently. I mean, I was in the same situation with Pokemon, trying to fill out my Pokedex. I'd go through the Pokedex and see what Pokemon I needed to get out of my boxes to evolve. I barely remember 2 of them, let alone like the 5 or 6 I was trying to. Like, it's just getting older, being stressed and tired. It all sucks. And it's been nice to have a reminder of that on my birthday. How do you get on there?
I mean, I'm amazed. So far, we've played quite a few games on the Playdate. Sometimes one of us will naturally favour a game more than the other. Sometimes we both are broadly in line. For the 2 this week, we are so closely aligned in kind of our feeling about them, but also the failings we found resulting probably from us more than them. And this game makes me feel really thick. And like you just said, I don't think generally we can say that's a direct failing on the game itself.
Absolutely not. It does everything to help you. Like, it even like makes notes in the demon book when you learn things. So you can keep track of things. And it just puts like a big symbol when you can like look at something that's going to be different. Yeah. It's like, it really does everything.
Like, I like the idea that you're teasing these clues from the kind of Necronomicon style guide as to how to summon each demon. But I found, like you said, the bit about working out which companions to bring along to each summoning nigh on impossible, because it always seems like there's a few things that aren't overtly explained, and that's the point. It's meant to be something you are puzzling through and working out. But it's things like, if a demon claims they like helping people locate lost objects, and I bring along someone from the yearbook who explicitly says they have lost an object, how do I then know who else to bring along? Yeah. And sometimes that information is the bit that can be a bit more hidden, a bit more kind of oblique. And for a long time, I thought it was essentially just trial and error. But for the first summon, I had to cheat and use a guide online. I thought, I can't come onto this podcast and essentially say I've made 0 progress. So I cheated through the first one. And then things started to make a bit more sense. Not to the point where I could consistently do anything, but it needs you to really read and absorb the biographies of every character and every demon in way more depth than I was anticipating.
Yeah.
Because you're essentially trying to interpret the more colloquially written descriptions of your friends, and then attempting to align them with the much more florid language of the Ars Goetia. That's the book you are reading. And if a demon...
I forgot it.
So if a demon boasts of being a thief, you have to consider how you might apply that skill to your friend's individual plights. And I think I started off looking for more obvious hints, going, okay, I'm clearly looking for a student that's got a biography that says, my name is Jim and I'm planning a bank heist. When in actuality, you're looking for a character who has had something confiscated at school. You know, they're trying to get it back. And in order to get that, they need someone who is a bit tricksy, a bit of a thief. So the theft would be then to sneak the item back to them, not to pull off grand larceny. And that's the bit I was not anticipating, I think. But the rest of the game, the art and music are excellent. I really, really like it. It looks and sounds great. The pixel work here especially is exquisite, really.
It's really nice.
And we've said a few times how when developers use kind of the display properly to make art, it can be really special. And really, like, this character in every still is just dripping out of this game. And as you mentioned, even the dialogue, once it's rolling along, once you've got past 100 full starts, the same few lines, it's really nicely written too. And it's just the setup. It needed me to do more work to really pass and enjoy it than I think I have the physical headspace to do, certainly at the moment. Interestingly, like researching this, the music is provided by the composer who scored pretty much every Telltale game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think there's definitely elements of Telltale-style dialogue in this game as well. Because really, this is a point-and-click game built around dialogue trees and very simple item puzzles. And as you've said already, again, we're very much in line today. I like that the Playdate is encouraging developers to make short-form weird experiences like this, even if it takes me longer to really get it than I would like to admit.
Yeah. I mean, all in all, two really good games that are totally wasted on
both of us.
On both of us. Yeah.
Useless boys.
Yeah. I encourage anyone with a Playdate to play them.
And maybe enjoy them.
Yeah. Tell us how you've got on with them. You know, let us live vicariously through your younger brains.
Oh, I hate you all.
Right, let's wrap this shit up. Look at that. 46 minutes. Get in.
Oh, it's the quickest we've ever done.
Yeah.
And all it takes is for me to be on the verge of a breakdown and not write quite as much information.
Basically. Our Brazil are 2-0 up.
Ah.
So there we go. Those were our latest two games for the Playdate. We had OMAZE and Demon Quest 85. Next Playdate is actually not going to be until the new year now, because we've got some specials lined up for you over Christmas. But when we do come back with the next Playdate, we will be talking about two games called Hyper Meteor and Zipper. I'm really looking forward to talking about those because I've played a bit of Zipper and I love it. Next week, we will be reporting back on our latest Fortnite challenge. Chris will be telling me how he's got on with Sunless Seas, the Mariner Edition. And I will be telling Chris how I got on with the Aquatic Adventures of the Last Human. Is that what it's called?
That's it.
It's not bad.
Well
that's not. Maybe that's where my brain capacity went this week. Is just trying to remember that title. Yeah. I'm very much looking forward to talking about those games next week. If you've enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed any of our episodes, do consider pledging to our Patreon, patreon.com/O3C Games. Do consider leaving a review, sharing the podcast on social media, tagging a friend in it. Chat to us on social media. We're at O3C Games on everything. And if you really want, you can chat with us individually. I'm, for now, on Twitter at Jonathan Dunn. Chris you can't find Chris on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. On Twitter.
You say it's a private.
I am at Chaz_Hodges, but you will need to send a request if you wish to follow me.
Can't even share your tweets.
After some whippersnappers that I educate had located my social media presence.
No. Not
they may
again.
be listening. Maybe they're listening now.
Maybe. What are you going to do? What you can do is join us next week for Fortnite Report.
Yep.
There we go. Right.